thank you all so much for your time, and thank you for choosing me over the beautiful sunshine and the canal. So, here today, I have to start with the legally mandated disclaimer that all of these opinions are mine and not my parent company of Google. So, it's a big problem. Software is still failing regularly. It's failing too much as well. This data is from the Chaos Report from, I can't remember the exact name at the minute, but it says basically that 2/3 of projects come in over time, over budget, or they don't actually meet the initial requirements. And 20% of projects fail to be delivered altogether. So, what's this talk all about? I'm going to have a quick high-level overview of gathering requirements, building prototypes from these requirements, and delivering success to your customers. What is it not? This is sadly not an example of building a global app or the next big hit app that's going to take over the world and be massively successful. In my previous role in Iconic and in Google currently, I have focused mainly on building custom software for people with an idea to scale it out to other customers, but it's very much a personal one-to-one process with individual clients, going on site, meeting them, talking to them, building something that satisfies their needs. The main areas I'm going to focus on today are having effective conversations with your customers, discover what they actually need, not what they say they want, grouping all of these notes you'll get into requirements, and then iteratively improving and building prototypes from these requirements. So the mistakes I've made, and the common mistakes, I still make them. As one of the reasons I'm making this talk is to reinforce that with myself, is I jump to solutions too quickly. So when someone's talking, I'm like, oh, I can solve this. And you don't really effectively listen. I make unstated assumptions, which everyone does. They're like, oh yeah, no, I know what this is. I've seen something like this before. Everyone's different, everyone's unique. And trying to rush through and deliver something too quickly can be an issue. So I'm going to start out telling you probably my worst mistake. It actually was the biggest learning experience of my career, so it worked out well. I think all mistakes should be learning experiences. And essentially was working with a large insurance broker, and they had a simple ask. They wanted to build a lightweight CRM system. They said Salesforce is too much. They didn't have anything on the market. All they wanted is a simple way to track their leads, really lightweight, really easy to use, and powerful and customized for their needs. So, I said, like, how hard can it be? Like, I was just off a successful project. I'm like, I can do this. This is fine. This is a greenfield project, what I've always wanted. And yeah, no. After 4 months, I think we were receiving 10 new feature requests a day. Everyone was unhappy. People were snapping at each other. We were assuming the worst intentions from our clients and stakeholders. They thought we weren't delivering. There was just a poor communication all around. We were feeling burned out. Me and my coworker were working 15-hour days trying to deliver features on time. And in the end, the project was a complete and total failure. And what went wrong? First thing we failed to do, and it's easily overlooked, is building rapport with your customer. It's super simple, just taking the time to actually talk to people, get to know them, make a bit of small talk, and it avoids being seen as a transactional person. You actually become somebody who's there to help, who listens to their problems, even just chatting about personal things, a bit of research on the person, talk about football, talk about how their company is doing, talk about are they meeting their targets, just that kind of thing. Get to know them. If you're really desperate, you can talk about the weather, but it's hard. The next stage is to ensure to always ask open questions. It's too easy to have, especially when you have an idea in your head already, you ask yes or no questions to validate your idea, and you don't get that rich data and that rich knowledge that comes from talking to your customer one-to-one. So there's a couple examples here. Why isn't it working for you right now? What goals do you have in general? What does success look like for you? There's lots of other ones that come naturally. It can be difficult to do this, and it's easy to slip back into really simple yes-no questions. Like this, avoiding closed questions. So even there, it's like, do you think it'll be useful? It's like, that's not a great question. You can just say, what do you think could be useful about this product? What do you not think will be useful about this product? Get kind of positives, negatives as best you can, and work forward that way. And finally, very trendy at the minute, but actively listen to the customer. Again, don't come up with solutions while they're talking. Really carefully listen to them. Summarize what they've said, repeat it back to them to confirm that you understood their needs correctly. And summarizing and confirming will be a common theme today. It's vital at all stages to ensure that you've accurately understood what people actually want. Similar to earlier with the 5 whys, I vaguely heard that before, but I hadn't used it that way. I generally find I deal with different kinds of stakeholders or clients. Some people are very detail focused, and it's very difficult to get them up out of that level. So I always ask why questions. So like, why is that important to you? Raise them up and try to understand their high level goals and their midterm tactical goals. Other people are very vague with what they want, and it's important to ask, like, how exactly do you want this to work? And get them down into details and really get a hard understanding of what that's going to look like. Okay. So when to use these skills? Use these dealing directly with customers, but also vital skills when dealing with internal stakeholders. I've used them when I've taken over projects midway through. Use them with your manager or the person handing them off, saying, why did you make these decisions? Try to deeply understand the reasoning behind every decision. And even in large public app-facing things with lots of user research and other inputs, these are still vital skills to know for your stakeholder interviews and other parts. Next, you have a ton of notes. I think some of my colleagues have referred to my notebooks as looking like a serial killer's notebook, and just random all caps scribbled around and crazy things around the place. So to try to bring order to chaos, I generally lean on one of the oldest ways that people have brought order to chaos, through storytelling. So you try to identify your main needs and group these together into narratives and general stories, which then define the user's problems and define different solutions we could have. And it becomes kind of user stories like you'd be well used to. And one extra step I like to take, it's from Alan Cooper, is to build an overarching problem statement that clearly defines the problem for the customer at a high level. This example here was taken from a recent project at work. It's an internal-facing product for our salespeople. And people were just finding it difficult. They want to create stuff for YouTube, but they've no idea what to create. There's so much out there. No idea to tell what's popular. No idea to tell, like, is it oversaturated? And from this, you're able to, again, it's essentially a very high-level summary, which you can then confirm, is this actually a problem? And will my vision statement actually lead towards a solution? And the vision statement is there to act as a guide for everything you do from then on. So you think, okay, I'm going to add this feature. Does this align with my vision statement? Is this relevant to what I'm going to do? And I think this ended up just being a basic dashboard, but yeah. Now on to the fun stage, where you get to actually start building some prototypes. Depends on different projects. Not all of the, I skip many of these stages. Obviously, if there's no UI, if I'm building an ETL pipeline or if I'm building a standard data processing workflow, you don't really need to be showing people like beautifully mocked up UI of something that doesn't exist. The first one I always start with, regardless of the project, is quick and basic paper prototypes. I didn't draw this one because my drawings are similar to my notebooks. They're a bit of a mess. So I actually personally prefer to almost do whiteboard iteration. So if I have the chance to sit in the room with my colleagues or sit in the room with my stakeholders, to actually sit there and draw my solution freehand and explain what I'm doing at each step and really communicate that through and ensure, again, it's what they actually need and what they want. I then like to move on to low fidelity prototypes. Personally, I do these using PowerPoint software. So I've used actually all three of these. I should probably be pimping out Google Slides, but to be fair, they're all perfectly good for this use. In this case, master slides are your friend. Create a master slide of your basic UI navigation, and you can just reuse that for all your different application states. And you actually, by that stage, you're already doing the grouping your application into components. You can identify reusable components, and it's a very powerful tool. It depends on your stakeholder and on your client. Some people, if you give them a low fidelity prototype, they look at it going like, what is this? But even if you don't share it directly with your client, it's a really good way to validate your ideas and ensure that what you're planning is actually going to work. Now, this is just a short sample. I haven't even used half of these. I have used Sketch, InVision, and I think Adobe XD I gave a go as well. They're all perfectly fine. My favorite is Figma. I don't know if any of you have used it. I think it's fantastic. It lets you like collaborate in real time. People can comment on it. You can bring in other people to like get feedback, direct feedback, and you can generate really cool, really powerful interactive prototypes. I am going to pimp out Figma a lot, even though I don't work for them. And finally, I like to build a functional prototype. So I'm not even sure if this is a real term or the accepted term, but essentially I like to start building the UI in the front end, if applicable. I usually use a framework. I really liked AngularJS. I then don't like Angular now, which is a bit awkward where I work at the minute. React seems really cool, but the first time I saw the whole JSX and HTML and I was, no, I'm not going near that. And I really like Vue. So I stick with Vue. And one of my last major UI projects in Iconic was actually building a large meeting planner kind of check-in application. And the really cool thing is you can build your entire front end just using dummy JSON objects as a back end, and changes are really quick. You don't have to touch the server side, don't have to touch any data layer, and you can give fully functional applications to people, which will then form the basis of the app. And once you've iterated on that, got user feedback, got a front end that works well, and all your thing is working well, you could then all you have to do is implement the back end services, and you've developed a fully featured proof of concept in hopefully record time. That would be my conclusion of very much success. And the key elements I like to take away are to always listen really carefully to what your customers are saying, summarize what they've said, and repeat it back to them, and make sure that what you think and what they think are perfectly aligned, and rapidly iterate and test everything as best you can. And that way, I hope you'll actually build products that your customers want and need, instead of building products in search of solutions.